The biggest problem facing the world today is mental health. If everybody had good mental health, then all the other problems would be solved. Because in order to take care of mechanical and practical problems, you have to have good mental health in order to attack those problems. If people have motives that are not worthwhile, then those bad motives are always going to creep into their activities. And you see that every day from the way the political people work. If people were just in a position to have their minds functioning right, then everything else would fall into line. Now, that's what I'm after. That's my dream. Now, that's a dream. That's probably not going to happen, but that's my dream.
Well, hello there, my lovely souls. My name is Atlii, your host here on the Syren podcast. If you're a returning listener, welcome back, my lovely soul. And if you're new here, welcome, my angel. I want you to sit back, relax, and unwind into today's episode. To my returning listeners and also to my new listeners, here in Syren, we are tea and wine lovers, so pour yourself something gentle, something warm, something that feels like a hug in a cup, whether it's your chamomile tea or your rooibos or a little peppermint tea, or your Earl Grey, maybe a little matcha if you're feeling fancy, or if the spirit calls you differently today, pour yourself a glass of wine. Whatever your vibe is, you're safe here. This is the Syren podcast. There's a moment right before the world wakes up, where everything feels kind of still. Envision that the city hasn't started performing yet. Your brain hasn't carried on with its endless scroll of worries yet. And in that moment, you remember what it's like to just be. And then the noise kicks in. And suddenly the world around you is filled with so much performance. It's filled with so much pretending. It's the smiling, the mask that you put on out to the world, the editing of your life to make it look civil, and it's not your fault. And I think we were born into this pressure, but what if the pressure isn't just social? What if the pressure is psychological? Something deeper, something older, something that's systemic. And Frank Zappa once said the biggest problem in the world today is mental health. And if everyone had good mental health, all the other problems will be solved. And when he says it, it sounds simple, right? But it's one of the most radical things anyone has said about the state of the world. I think he wasn't talking about therapy culture or self-care products or a clinical diagnosis. I think he was talking about the truth that no one wants to face, which is so much of the world's chaos begins in minds that are not well. Think about it. The war, the corruption, inequality, even environmental destruction, they are not acts of nature. They are decisions that are made by people with unchecked egos, people with unresolved traumas and distorted beliefs, and no awareness that they're projecting that pain onto everything around them. And while we chase external solutions, new laws, new technologies, new revolutions, we ignore the most important one. And I think we should be asking ourselves what kind of minds are building those systems. We keep asking what's wrong with the world, but maybe the real question is what's wrong with how we think, what's wrong with how we feel and relate to each other. And maybe that's why we all wear masks. Not because we want to lie, but I think it's because somewhere deep down we were taught that truth is sometimes dangerous. And as children, we learn quickly to be quiet, to be good, to be strong, be happy. And we adapted. We shaped ourselves into what would be socially accepted. And by the same time, we are grown, or rather by the time we are grown, the mask is not so much a disguise anymore. I think it starts becoming more of a survival tool. We don't show our sadness because the world rewards performance, right? And we don't show our softness because we've confused vulnerability with weakness. We live in a world that prioritizes efficiency and not slowness at all, and we prioritize aesthetic and not depth. And we are taught to curate and brand ourselves instead of knowing and understanding ourselves, and platforms profit from our performance because it's a thing of the better the mask, the more applause we get, right? And in all that pretending, I think we've forgotten what it feels like to be seen, to be seen fully, to be seen messily, to be honestly seen. But what if healing isn't about fixing yourself? What if it's about unmasking? What if the most radical thing you could do right now is to show up without the mask? Syren is a place where we don't pretend to have it together, where the misunderstood can breathe, where artists can fall apart and still be sacred. Syren wants to create that space and to remember that inner clarity is a revolution in a time of noise. So let's talk, my lovely souls. Let's deconstruct this. Let's deconstruct this not as experts, not as brands, but as people. Because I think what Zappa said wasn't a rant. It was more of a prophecy, in my opinion. And maybe if we listened, we'd stop designing polished spaces and start building places where we can finally breathe. At the same time, I understand why we put on masks. People judge when you show your real self. And maybe they judge because they are struggling with their own fears and wounds, shaped maybe by different backgrounds or experiences. And sometimes the world even uses your vulnerability against you. So putting on a mask becomes a way to protect ourselves from being hurt. It's a way to protect ourselves from being misunderstood or attacked, even by those closest to us. So yeah, you do have to see both sides of why we wear masks in this case. And Again, Frank Zappa said, the biggest problem in the world is how we think and relate, how our minds get trapped by judgment, by fear, by misunderstanding. And that's exactly what Syren wants to challenge, not by pretending to have it all figured out, but by creating a space where being misunderstood or sensitive isn't a weakness. It's part of being human. A place where masks can come off safely and healing can begin. Part 2. Luxury shifting. Once upon a time, luxury needed to be seen to be believed. It shimmered on wrists, whispered from price tags, sat on display, pristine and untouched. But something's changing, quietly and delicately, right? Luxury is no longer just something you wear, it's more of something you feel. It's the stillness before the day begins. It's the scent of eucalyptus in the shower. It's your favorite spoon. And luxury is less about the showroom and more about the sanctuary. You see it everywhere, right? If you're paying attention, take Hermes, for example. It started in saddles, that whole equestrian thing. Sorry for the noise. And you feel that equestrian calm in everything they make still, right? But now it's not just about the leather bags they've produced and the scarves. It's more of furniture now. It's cafes and even entire spaces. It's the same attention to detail, just stretched into everyday life. I think the more a brand becomes part of your daily rhythm, the deeper you feel the connection with it. I don't know if I'm making sense. And the message starts to become subtle but clear. Take Louis Vuitton, for example, and it's starting to build hotels now. Bulgari is no longer adorning wrists and necks, through the jewelry. It is happening that they are curating spaces to live in. They are curating hotels that feel like private sanctuaries, experiences that move beyond jewelry and into lifestyle. And judging from what's been happening within the luxury space, I think luxury is becoming more of a lifestyle and not a symbol. It's not a flex, not so much of a flex like that. And it's more of a feeling. I think the more, again, I will sort of kind of repeat what I just said. The more a brand becomes part of your daily rhythm, the deeper the connection feels. And that's exactly where Syren is headed, not just as a publication, not just as a creative agency, not just as a podcast, and not just as a creative house, but a presence that lingers in your day, in the way you think and what you return to when the world gets loud. A kind of quiet luxury for the mind. And Syren was never meant to shout. It was meant to stay. It was meant to stay in your habits and your late night thoughts and your rituals of creativity and care. And we are building something that doesn't just look good, but something that also feels good. Something that understands your sensitivity, your need for beauty, for depth, for slowness. And luxury isn't always silk and gold. Sometimes it's being understood, and that's what Syren wants to offer. We want to offer a space that feels like a soft mirror, in a way, if I can describe it in that sense. And maybe that's because we are finally yearning for presence over possession. Not more, but meaningful, not a performance, but peace. The new luxury isn't loud. It doesn't beg to be captured. It happens when no one's watching, and maybe that's the point. It's soft, it's slow, and somehow it's become the deepest kind of wealth. At Syren, we notice these shifts and we reflect on them, not to romanticize, but to reconnect. Oh, these birds today are just being so wild. At Syren, we notice these shifts because the creative life isn't about chasing the next thing. It's about cultivating world. Is about cultivating a pace, a texture that nourishes you deeply. And luxury is not distant anymore. I think it's daily. You find it in how you care for yourself, in the in-between, how you carry your sensitivity like silk. It's in your breath, your space, and your rhythm. And if you're listening right now, maybe you already know. You don't have to prove your worth. You just have to live it. Part 3. Conditioning of the mind. There's a kind of conditioning that doesn't arrive with warnings. It slips quietly into your thoughts, dressed like wisdom or advice. It teaches you to be grateful, to not ask for too much, to be realistic. At first, it sounds like love, but over time, it becomes a quiet voice inside you that stops you from dreaming bigger. I took the initiative about 5 years ago when I was still in high school to unlearn the conditioning that shaped my worldview. The kind that sneaks into your mind not because it's true, but because it's been repeated around you for so long. It begins to feel like truth, right? And as more time passes, the more realizations I get and the more truths reveal themselves to me. I come from a background that sits somewhere between upper middle class to middle class and upper lower class. It's strange, right? But I just come from those dynamics. And that in-between space shaped the way I saw the world It taught me to stay grateful for what I had, to not ask for more, to play it safe, to not dream too loudly. And I apologize for the birds again. And while gratitude is beautiful, I've come to see how dangerous it becomes when it's used to silence curiosity, when it's used to silence ambition, or even a healthy sense of dissatisfaction. And if you learn to play it safe, to not dream too loudly, to stay in your lane. No one ever said it out loud, but it was there in the way people around me reacted to change, in the way they reacted to ambition or even confidence. Wanting more was seen as greed, and being curious was quite suspicious, because it's like, why do you want to always know more? And dreaming too big was seen as arrogance. But what if that's the very thing that keeps us stuck? When your surroundings reward being content and label curiosity as trouble, it becomes hard to imagine another life. You think dreaming big is for other people. You start believing that reaching for more is selfish or even dangerous. This is how mental conditioning works. It builds invisible walls around you. It's quite dangerous because it doesn't just shape your thoughts, it also limits your entire worldview. It tells you not to bother applying for that opportunity. It tells you people like you don't belong in certain spaces. It teaches you to shrink before the world even asks you to. And the truth that scares me and also sets me free at the same time is that the environment you grow up in can make or break you. It's not just about material surroundings, it's the mental environment, the conversations you overhear, the beliefs you absorb without knowing, the ceilings you think exist just because no one around you ever broke through them. You haven't seen the bigger things that life could offer outside of that environment you're from. The philosopher Krishnamurti, I hope I am not butchering their name, and if I am, I apologize. And Jiddu, once said, "It is no measure of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society." I repeat, it is no measure of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society. And that line stays with me, because what if what we've been adjusting to is the very thing that keeps us from expanding, from growing, from reaching our full potentials? What if the normal we've inherited is not freedom, but a beautifully decorated cage? It's a scary thought, I wish someone had told me earlier that this kind of thinking isn't truth. It's programming. It's programming that was passed down from generations who were taught to survive, not to thrive. And while it comes from love, it can also hold you back. And here's what I've realized. where you grow up, right? Your street, your community, your school. Those aspects can deeply affect how you see yourself and what you think is possible. And if no one ever tells you otherwise, you might spend your whole life inside a box you never chose. You're not just conditioned by the world, you're conditioned by people who were conditioned themselves. Your parents, the teachers, your family, your friends, they passed down what was passed down to them. That's how programming works, or that's how I can make sense of it. It feels normal because everyone around you has been programmed the same way. It's only when you step out of that circle, even mentally, that you begin to question it. And once you question it, the veil begins to lift. But questioning isn't always easy, right? It's lonely, it's very uncertain, and it's powerful. Not a lot of people encourage questioning. And I wish someone had told me years ago to never settle, to never confuse comfort with freedom, to read more. I've always loved reading, but I wish I had that someone who would tell me to read more, to learn more about things that are happening around the world, to challenge more of my own thinking, especially the systems and ideas that shape how we live, how we work, and how we dream. And some people, it's unfortunate that some people will see your growth as a threat. They might call you ungrateful or say that you've changed. And that's because your growth reminds them of their own fear of change. Thinkers like bell hooks, oh my gosh, one of my favorite thinkers and authors. Bell hooks spoke about how healing and self-knowledge can disrupt the norms we've been taught. She wrote about how loving yourself in a world that teaches you to doubt your worth is a radical act. And it is. Because once you begin to see past the conditioning, you start to wake up. And waking up changes everything. And I'm not also speaking about this whole mainstream woke culture and whatnot, no. We just really have to think about this, right? You start realizing that being grateful doesn't mean settling. That staying small doesn't make you humble. It keeps you from becoming who you really are. That questioning the world around you doesn't mean you're difficult. It just simply means you are aware and you're awake. You're aware of things that are happening around you. And I would definitely encourage people to start questioning more, to start acknowledging and embracing awareness. Maya Angelou once said, "Do the best you can until you know better. Then when you know better, you do better." I'll repeat. Maya Angelou once said, "Do the best you can until you know better. Then, when you know better, you do better." But the first step is knowing. Knowing that there's a world outside of what you've been taught. Knowing that your voice matters, that your story matters, that your hunger for more is not a flaw, it's your power. So here's to those who unlearn, who ask better questions, who take the risk of being real in a world that wants them to pretend, who understand their background is part of their story, but not the end of it. Cheers to that. Because the world will tell you to stay in your place. And Syren is here to tell you that there's more. You're allowed to want more for yourself. Syren is here to tell you to read more, to ask more, to keep learning, to stay curious. The mask doesn't protect you. Sometimes it holds you back, alright? And that ceiling was never really real to begin with. So, as we wrap up today's episode, I want you to take a moment and really think about this. What parts of your own conditioning are shaping your world without you even realizing it? And more importantly, what if you gave yourself permission to question those limits, to unlearn what no longer serves you, and to start imagining a life beyond what you've been told is, and I quote, normal? If this episode spoke to you, if it stirred something inside, I humbly ask you to share it with someone who might need to hear it too. Please do drop a comment, start a conversation, help Syren grow, because every share means more room for soulful interviews in future, for richer stories, and the slow, beautiful evolution of this space into something truly meaningful and big. Remember, growth isn't about rushing. It's about staying soft in a hard world, moving slow enough to feel every step, and holding sacred the journey you're on, exactly as you are. Until next time, my lovely souls, stay soft, stay slow, and stay sacred.